Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Change Chat. I am Ed Finn, your host, and I am very lucky today to be joined by Dr. Brent Anders. Brent is what I would consider an expert, and he may push back on the word expert, but I don't think so, in AI. So he has been doing a lot of work on this, and I'm going to let him do most of his introduction himself. But I do want to tell you he is currently at American University of Armenia. He is a lecturer and researcher and AI and education consultant, and is currently the director of the Soverel Center for Teaching and Learning. And I hope I pronounced the
Mhm.
center name correct, Brent. But we're going to have a really good discussion today. We're going to have some back and forth, and I'm just really excited to have him on the program. I've seen him in a lot of different contexts in my work in academia, but just want you all to really get to know him and kind of get to see what his thoughts are on where generative artificial intelligence is and what's beyond that. So what the framework and the future kind of looks like. But that being said, I'm going to hand it over. Brent, please fill in any of the color I didn't paint there, and we will go ahead and get started.
No, you did it pretty well. One of the big things is that my whole mission is to help academia understand the importance of AI literacy and how we all need to address it in different ways, right? Because you have some instructors that are pushing against AI, some that are fully adopting it. But AI literacy of AI, this is something that everyone needs, regardless of where you fall upon as far as how much you like it or dislike it. Everyone needs to have this literacy in order so that we can have this type of engagement, this type of debate that's needed dealing with AI. And this is something that young people need as well as older people. So this is a mixture of things that we definitely need to be talking about.
Yeah, and so that brings me to a question that I want to talk about. I'm not going to necessarily go in order
Hmm.
because you brought up AI literacy, and I think that's really important for everybody. And you've also heard this move to call it also fluency, and there's a lot of terminology floating out there. But I would be curious, what does that look like to you? So, as someone doing this work and seeing this happen every day, what do you see a working definition of AI literacy, AI fluency, that type of thing? What would you characterize that as?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I first got into AI about 6 months before ChatGPT came out. So I got into it because a provost that I was working for asked me to look into the different ways that students might be conducting academic misconduct at the university. So I went into the research, looked at all different things, things that have existed in all of history for different reasons why students might do this. And then I came across some articles and some research talking about how AI is starting to develop and how some students are starting to use it. And I'm like, surely we're not at that point where a student could find some tool like this and just be able to create text. And sure enough, I was able to find some. So this was like a precursor to ChatGPT, but it was out there. And then that really made me think, oh, wow, we're this close. Everyone needs to know about that, especially people in academia, because my biggest fear is that students would start to use it and then we wouldn't be prepared as teachers, as instructors, and professors. And sure enough, that's what happened. Even though I wrote several different articles and a book about it, people just were like, nah, I don't think that's really going to happen. There was kind of this issue of disbelief. And now there's still an issue of some people just wanting to sort of turn away or, you know what, let's make a task force about this. I'm all in favor for task force, but that was a 3 years ago thing. Now we're into AI being widely used by most students throughout the world. So this is a thing that really needs to be addressed. And so then that comes into, okay, well, how do we talk about AI literacy? And that's an issue in itself because when I go around to many different universities, many different educational institutions, and when I ask them, I pose that question to them, what is AI literacy? And it's a very abstract term for a lot of people, as you can imagine. They're all over the place with it. And there have been some frameworks that have come out. You have the United Nations, you have EU framework for AI, many different institutions. Stanford has a nice one, but they're kind of all over the place. So what I tried to do when I came up with my framework is I tried to make it simple and easy for everyone to understand, as well as for everyone to try to implement in helping develop our own AI literacy and then to help our students develop AI literacy. So I break this up into four components. The first one is awareness. So this is simply awareness that AI exists and it's being implemented in so many different things and it's affecting society, both good and bad. And that's a key thing. We have to be aware of that it isn't just this miracle thing that'll fix everything. No, this is something that's affecting us in many different ways, whether that's the content that we're seeing, because it's AI is deciding that on a lot of the social media, a lot of all these different things, whether this is dating apps, all sorts of things where AI is being integrated. So we have to know that this can be used for good and can be used for bad. So that's awareness, number one. The second one, which is a very big one, is capability. So here there's sort of two different aspects to this as well. We have the capability of the AI. This for a while was knowing that different AIs would do different things. But now, of course, we have some AIs that are multimodal. But even then, there are different AIs that have different capabilities, different strengths, different weaknesses, different ways that they're presenting information. Some can do audio, some can do video, some can do both, images, vibe coding, all sorts of different things. So there's capabilities as far as AI capabilities, as well as understanding that it's not sentient, right? What is the real capability here? And then there's also our capabilities. What are our capabilities in using the AI? So this is things like, what about prompt engineering? And, there's going to be this ongoing thing about prompt engineering. And I've actually heard this for almost 2 years now about, hey, the AI is getting so good that you don't need to have prompt engineering. That will never be the case because the way that I view prompt engineering is not as a technical thing, but purely as understanding what is the best way for me to ask a question? What is the best way for me to pose a task? So that's a humanities thing, right? That's me critically thinking about how can I best describe something as far as what I want. So there's a good advanced prompt formula that you can use. And again, it's not real engineering, it's just putting things into a proper order as far as, oh, yeah, do I have context in there? Am I being specific enough? Am I explaining myself enough to get the very best answer possible? So that's prompt engineering. So that's this aspect of capability. And then as a third component, I have knowledge, meaning you have basic knowledge of AI as far as terms, understanding data safety and security. What does that mean when you're dealing with AI, handling data within an AI? Is it okay to put this information in this AI? Well, there are different types of AI, some that are walled off, some that aren't. So that's important to understand. And then this understanding, this knowledge of deep fakes, scams, AI can be used in many different ways. I need to know this so that I don't get scams. I need to know that now, in this day and age, anything that's digital could have been made by an AI. Text, audio, video, images, an AI could have made it very realistically. So that's something that everyone needs to know. Again, even if someone hates AI, they still need to know this information so that they can not be scammed by an AI. So that's a basic understanding there. And then finally, again, I don't want to say that this is the most important component, but this is an important component because they all work together. That's the component of critical thinking. Now, critical thinking is always important, but now even more so because there are different aspects of critical thinking when we think about AI. Aspects such as understanding hallucinations, that an AI could give you a wrong answer, but not just a wrong answer, but a confident wrong answer. So it very much seems like it could be real, but no, this is a hallucination. So we have to understand that we have to critically analyze whatever an AI gives us because it's conversational. So it's trying to continue this conversation. So it might sound real at times. Other aspects of critical thinking are things like ethics, bias, all these things that we need to know. Now, an AI will always be biased in some way just because the bias exists in reality, right? You look at encyclopedia, guess what? The encyclopedia will probably be biased in one way. If I'm looking at an encyclopedia that was made in the United States, it's probably going to be biased in that direction. Same way, an AI from China will probably be biased towards China. These are the realities that we need to be aware of so that when we use different AIs, we can understand that in our critical analysis. Another aspect of critical thinking here would be over reliance and knowing that this is a real thing that could happen when I use this advanced tool in this way. Now, I'm saying the word tool, but of course, AI is much more than that because there's different ways of using it. Tool, mentor, peer, coach, all sorts of different things. So it's having this awareness and being able to talk about AI on a higher level. That's where AI literacy is really fundamental for us to even have this type of conversation.
No, thank you for that. And I appreciate the nuance, especially when you talk about the humanities or the human element at the center of all of this. Because a lot of times, at least from my work as well, and a lot of what I see, we think of prompt engineering as a technical writing skill instead of asking the right questions. And we lose that critical analysis piece. But also, and this kind of leads me into my next question, but you have this tension, I think, between how much do we know, because your knowledge dimension really speaks to this. How much do we actually know, and how good or how well can we check what the AI produces?
Mm,
Because again, if you ask a question and it may be off a little and it returns a confident hallucination,
yeah.
how do we know for sure how to check that? And at what points, and that's kind of the question, when you talk about introducing this into the education space, at what points do you see where there could be more harm or where it could really be fruitful? And then where you run that balance of, the introduction of cognitive offloading or loss of individual capacity. It's causing tension throughout academics and, quite frankly, the business world,
Yeah.
because once students get into the business world, they can't afford to make some of these mistakes that they are both encouraged and allowed to do in an academic context.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious as to your thoughts on that because I don't know where that balance is. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure a lot of people are struggling with at what point do we introduce it? At what point do we say, no, this is not the right environment for it? And we need you to understand why you think a certain way about these things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll open up the floor to you, but you really got my wheels turning with that whole idea of grounding it in a human question rather than it being prompt engineering in the sense of technicality and then that knowledge and critical thinking piece.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, in what you're talking about here, you're asking multiple questions that have multiple answers to each question. And I'll explain what I mean to that because again, it's one of those things where we have to have kind of this metacognition where we can have multiple truths, right? So to begin with, I very much agree that hey, we always need to have foundational knowledge, right? Foundational knowledge because if we it's a poor analogy, but let's bring in the calculator, right? This is everyone's favorite analogy for AI is a calculator. But let's use this. So if I take, let's say, a first grader, and I say, "Hey, I'm going to teach you about math," and all I do is I hand them that calculator, and I say, "This is how you do math." They'll be like, "Okay, so to do multiplication, I do this, and I hit the buttons." Yeah, guess what? They'll be able to do math. They will be because they have that calculator. Now, what level will they be able to achieve as far as understanding math? They won't be able to really understand math because they're only using that calculator. So, yes, we need foundational knowledge for them to be able to understand what are numbers? How does this work together? How does this combine? How can we now, once you get a level of good foundational knowledge, now how can we bring in this tool to help you to achieve even greater heights by using a calculator to do big, complicated math. So, in the same framework, that's how we need to look at AI, meaning that, hey, we don't give them the AI and say, okay, go at it. There's AI that'll solve all your problems. No, we need to build foundational knowledge. But even as we're going through this at the lower levels, we're still starting to develop AI literacy because we're talking about it. There's age appropriate things that we can do with AI, even at the lower levels, to help them know about, hey, guess what? Let's just have a discussion about general media literacy, right? And let's talk about, hey, if you see something in TV, does that mean it's true? Well, no, it doesn't. But they need to understand that. We need to teach them. We can't just say, well, no, I don't want to talk about AI at all because they're only first graders. Well, guess what? You not teaching them about AI is basically telling them that they need to figure it out on their own. And that's not going to be effective because they're already using AI. Why? Because they're being exposed to it. Most people don't understand that your cell phone, right? Pretty much all modern cell phones now have some aspect of AI built into them already, whether it's in the background or whether you're using social media or an editor of some kind, there's AI being used there. So that's why we need to think about this as introducing students to appropriate age level aspects of AI literacy from the very beginning, just to help them understand this thing. And even things like over reliance on AI. When I teach how to avoid having over reliance on AI, the very first thing is AI literacy, right? So that you even understand this.
Mhm.
And then the next one is awareness. If you've never even heard that term over reliance, then you might not even ever know that you're over relying on AI. So again, this type of understanding, but again, age appropriate. I totally understand and agree. Now, there's a new infographic that I released here recently within the last month that really captures some of this, in that I make a very bold statement here, and it's a bit controversial, right? So this is good for online content, controversial, right? So I make this argument that, hey, the very first tier now of all students is someone that has basic knowledge. So this could be a high school graduate. And I say that now basic knowledge also includes AI literacy. That's basic knowledge. That's tier one. Everybody should be right here. And now for the controversial part, I say that, hey, a high school graduate who has strong AI skills that can use AI really effectively is almost pretty much on par with a college graduate. What? That's harsh. That's hard for me to say. But if I have a high school education, a good high school education, and I have AI skills, I could use the AI to accomplish pretty much anything that someone with a college graduation credentials can do. Now, that's just tier two. But to get to tier three, well, tier three, that would be someone with a college education that's now a subject matter expert and can use AI. That's now a higher level. And someone with just high school education, they won't be able to compete, because now you have to understand that now it's a subject matter expert that could use AI that much more effectively. So this kind of goes back to that analogy of, hey, if I have a calculator and I can use it really well, I could do all sorts of math. But if I don't truly understand numbers, if I'm not a subject matter expert in understanding how math actually works, I'm very limited in what I can do with that calculator. But you give that calculator to a mathematician, someone that is a subject matter expert, now they can accomplish way more heights. So that's tier three, a subject matter expert with AI skills. But that fourth one, this is the ultimate one, that's a subject matter expert with the AI skills, as well as the soft skills that must be pushed, and this is in higher academia, in order for us to truly compete. Because hey, if I'm competing against someone that, yeah, they're great with AI skills, they're subject matter expert, but guess what? I'm creative. I have leadership capabilities. I have emotional intelligence. I can work in a team. Well, these are all soft skills that someone that's just focused on just the data of their degree and just AI skills, they won't be developing this. So if they don't have that, they won't be able to truly compete. So now you see how it's a mixture of the humanities aspects once again, personal human skills as well as AI skills, as well as being a subject matter expert. That's how you get to that ultimate tier. And that's being able to put this all together in a way that maximizes our human aspects as well as our AI skills capability.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. The controversial nature of the high school graduate being on par with the college graduate. And I don't know that I necessarily agree, but
Yeah.
I see what you're driving at. And I don't know that I don't necessarily agree, because you qualified it really well. And you said someone who graduates with a good high school
Hmm.
education. So, but that's really hard to standardize.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we run into, and this is kind of a tangent question, and Brian Alexander will tell you about this. I've always been on this since I've known him, but the idea of the digital divide. And so this idea of AI seems to be expanding the digital divide in ways that, quite frankly, at an accelerated pace that we haven't seen in a long time, since early internet, where, rural areas were completely cut off and not able to even access it. And with all the different paid tiers, paid models, differentiated models like you talked about that do different things and
Yeah.
have different capabilities, how do we ensure kind of that standardized quality education at the K through 12 level, at the primary level and secondary level, that helps produce those students you're talking about that come out? And you could even take this a little bit broader, and we kind of discussed this in one of the AAC&U Institute panels, was this idea of also pulling in community libraries and public
Mm.
libraries, and, really looking what what education means,
Mhm.
and how we get people in one way or another to that level where they have that literacy. I'm kind of curious because I don't disagree in theory with what you're saying in that someone who's gone through high school, has had a really good education along with AI literacy, could do a lot of the same things of what we see as a current college student, but they might not be able to truly synthesize it till they get that subject matter expertise.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, and again, you're right as far as the quantification of it, right? Because I'm very much looking at things from my experience, and I work in liberal universities, right? So that now you're getting a breadth as well as a depth. So that's important for to be able to properly think, to be able to maximize that that advanced prompt formula so that when you're asking the AI a question, you'll be able to ask it a better type of question, give it a better type of task, as well as be able to look at that result and better understand, use that information at a higher level. So yeah, I totally agree. So you gave part of my answer with how do we to help reduce the digital divide, the AI divide now, right? Because of these things. So one of them is like what you said, that totally the libraries. I've always been a very strong supporter of libraries at any educational institution and any city, town, right? I think that that's sort of a mandate that it should be there to help everyone so that we can have more of a level playing field. So that means funding for libraries so that they can have access to AI, meaning subscriptions that would be openly available to everyone. I've also on my video channel, I've talked about these type of things as well. And my big thing is I think we should definitely push for some sort of law that says that, hey, like right now, you go and there's many different AIs that you can use. There's a free plan, right? Nobody is forcing them to have that free plan. They're all businesses. They're in the what's a business in business for? To make money. So at any point, all of those companies could say, guess what? We don't have a free plan anymore. Right? So then where are you at? Now you're really divided, right? So yeah, my thing is that I think that should be an aspect of, hey, no, this is like the highway. This is like airwaves. There needs to be a mandated free plan. If you want to do business dealing with AI, this is so important to everyone that there must be a free plan. One of the big things when I do workshops dealing with AI, I really tell instructors and students because I like to deal with free aspects in order to try to maintain this thing. I'm not going to require a student to get a subscription, but I am going to have the student use AI to develop their skills. So they're using free things. So when I teach this, I help instructors and students understand that you need to know that there are many different AIs out there. Right now, there's like 20 AIs out there that you could go and access, but you need to know, okay, what are the differences for what I'm using it for? Is it pretty much the same? What if I run out of credits on one? Can I use another one? Would it be as effective? What are the differences as far as what I get from these things? Claude, I like using Claude, but Claude, guess what? Out of all the main ones, they give you the least amount of free stuff. Quickly, you'll be able to be like, oh, I'm done with Claude because I already used up my time for today. But ChatGPT, they're very generous. Gemini, very generous. Grok, pretty generous. So again, there's all these different ones to understand, okay, where can I go? What can I use? But yeah, this is an important thing for students and everyone else to understand what are the resources, where can I go, which one is better than the other one. Again, this is an aspect of AI literacy.
Mhm. No, I appreciate that, and I think that, and even and we won't get into this today, but even the idea of the capability, so back to your point of what AI is capable of, the capability differences between the free models and the paid models,
Yeah.
and then where does that enter in, and how do you navigate that with a student who may be using one and another student may have the resources to use a paid model?
Well, now you get into another really important question, and I view this as a challenge aspect of AI in education, right? Is assessment. When you're assessing students, how are you assessing them? And in higher education, we go to what we generally think of the essay, right? And so with that, we have to take a step back. Was that ever a good assessment of the student's knowledge and capabilities? My answer to that is yes, with a caveat in that, yes, it was a good assessment, but did we ever know that the student actually wrote that? Because even before AI, if I assigned this to you and I said, you have 2 weeks to create this essay and then give it to me, I could have always gone to my brother, gone to my father, gone to my uncle and said, hey, can you write this for me? I mean, there's paper mills out there that were very much thriving that aren't thriving anymore because we have AI now. So that's always been an issue as far as do we really know? So we can't sort of blame the AI and say that AI created cheating because, of course, it didn't. Now, does AI make it easier and faster? Yeah, of course it does. But I do appreciate AI for holding up that mirror to us and say, look, this assessment, it's always been this way. You didn't know before, now you don't know. And I see this as a real challenge because I teach freshman seminar as well as professional communication, as well as technical writing. And I've been in a freshman seminar course where we as instructors come together and talk about, we do some norming of some essays, right? So like, do we each think that this is an A essay? Do we each think this is a B essay? And I distinctly remember one time going in there and this one instructor, she was like, nope, this is definitely not an A. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is a great essay. Why would you say it's not an A? She's like, I can totally tell that this was written by AI. And I'm like, you can totally tell that it was written by AI? How can you totally tell? She's like, well, it's formulaic. And some of the words used here are a bit too advanced for freshmen. And I'm like, one, it's formulaic. Guess what? We teach a formula. We teach the 5 paragraph writing style. So it is a formula. And she's like, oh, well, the advanced words. Yeah. Freshmen all the time will look up in a thesaurus. This sounds cool. And I'm going to throw it in there. That can't be enough for you to say that this is written by AI. And then the lead instructor who was organizing this, she said, hey, guess what? These were written in 2017. So this isn't an AI written one. But you can see how so many instructors now are jumping to that as far as, oh, I can totally tell this is AI. So they're making these decisions, they're making these judgments. So that's the difficult thing now when we're using essay because of the situation. So there are different ways of addressing this, do some in-class writing, which is okay on some level, but that doesn't properly teach how to write a full modern essay where guess what? We use Microsoft Word. So it's a mixture of those things, oral presentations. My big thing is that I hold students accountable. So that means that at any point, I might say, okay, you just turned in your essays. Now we're going to do in-class writing. Write a reflection on your essay. You need to know what you wrote about. So if the AI just wrote it all for you, you won't be able to write any type of reflection on anything. So a mixture of some of those things. Sometimes we include presentation as a short presentation about your essay, a mixture of those things in order to really get that. Again, this is a developing thing because we're still addressing this, but it's a matter of do we need a 10-page essay or maybe a 5-page essay with a presentation? So a mixture of those things.
Yeah, and I appreciate that nuance, and I think that you give a great example of a 2017 paper, and I think I'm gonna ask the question here in a minute about, where you see the greatest opportunities and challenges, and you kinda started that. But I have had students where I've never said I can totally tell, but I've said, "Okay, this is a resource that is 5 years before the book in an older writing that is publicly available now when we have a textbook that you're supposed to be quoting from." And so that starts a conversation. And I
Mhm.
think, first of all, it's less intimidating to the student if they did it and they were doing it for other reasons besides just really trying to cheat. But it also puts the student who may be intentionally cheating on notice that I'm actually paying attention.
Right.
And the idea of process, I really like that, you talk about, you look at the end goal, but how are we assessing that? Are we assessing the mind map or the outline that led to the first draft, that led to the second
Yes.
draft, and then that led to the final? If we're doing that, then we can see along the way what's happening. If we're not, then maybe we need to think about why we haven't been. And
Mhm.
so I appreciate that nuance and I appreciate the way you're approaching that. And I'll let you answer on these opportunities, but I see a possible opportunity of rethinking how we assess things
Yeah.
coming from a teaching and learning center.
And it really brings up lots of difficult things. So we're implementing our writing course slightly differently than we have in the past to try and address some of these AI issues. But even before that, I created another course again, just structurally, so that as to see maybe there is a different way now to teach writing, right? Because we have AI. So it raises lots of difficult questions for us to think about. Meaning, okay, how am I even grading an essay now? What does my rubric actually even look like? Because if I still am giving 25% for grammar and mechanics and spelling, should I even be doing that now when we have technology that can make it perfect every single time? So it's not really about the person anymore, right? We have Grammarly, we have Microsoft Word built in AI that's becoming even more in Microsoft Word. So we have those things. So then it's a question of like, okay, so what is it that I'm actually grading in that final product? Is it more original idea? Is it more being able to properly flow through the conversation? Because when I say, hey, you know what, your document is a bit, it sounds too much like AI. Well, what does that even mean to the student? Like, can we articulate that? And once that goes away, as far as the AI simply being able to write perfectly as a human, well, then, so then what's the issue, right? So, like when I created this sort of made up course, where I went through the process, my big thing there was like, okay, I would assess students on in class exams dealing with components of writing. Because if that's sort of my SLO, right, that I know that a student can write and understand and identify key aspects of writing, well, that's the foundational knowledge. So now when they use an AI to write, because guess what? In the end, that's how most people are going to write. A majority of people will write that way. Well, if that's the reality, even though I might not like it, because I love writing, right? Even though I might not like it, well, I still want my students to be able to properly analyze whatever the AI creates and to have that foundational knowledge to be able to go, no, that's a poor transition. No, this didn't organize content. This doesn't flow right. So maybe those are the important things that we focus on, as opposed to me being able to physically write all paragraphs, all parts. Again, more controversy to contemplate, but these are just some aspects that I think are important for us to really think about, as far as what are our SLOs, what are we really grading for?
That leads me in zooming out a little bit from the assessment piece, but talking about with Gen AI in full swing. I mean, it's out there. And like you said, it's constantly evolving. So it's changing rapidly. And what we knew yesterday has probably changed today and will probably change tomorrow. But from your vantage point, as an educator who focuses on this topic, what do you see as the most important? If you had to kind of rank, I don't want to give you how many, but if you had to rank like the most important opportunities and challenges facing higher ed around generative AI. Generative AI. I fight so hard because people are already talking about general artificial
Right.
intelligence, which is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But AI as it exists now, what are those really important opportunities and challenges from your perspective?
Yeah. So, like one big thing, and there are different things. I'll focus first on instructors, right? So the reality is, when we get to higher education, I have a PhD in education. So that means that I have a background dealing with pedagogy, with instructional capabilities, technology. That's all me. 99% of the people in higher education, they don't have that. So, how are they supposed to be effective instructors? This has been an age long thing, right? But the thing is, now that we have AI, that is one of the most powerful opportunities that now it brings. So, like this book here, Designing Instruction with Generative AI. So, what I did with this book is I try to show instructors, hey, here are key aspects of instructional design. When I talk about that, that's laying foundational knowledge. And then I tell them, hey, you could easily use generative AI to help you to make a better course. So now we can create better courses for our students because AI is there to assist us. I very much love instructional designers. I've worked with them in the past. The problem is that there aren't enough of them, right? Most universities, they might have one, maybe two. The university I work at right now, we have zero, right? And so that's just it. So how am I supposed to make a better course if I don't have a background in it? Well, the AI can assist you because now the AI can assume the role of an instructional designer, but you have to know how to properly interact with it. So this is where prompt engineering comes in. So that's a great sort of opportunity that we now have, that any instructor can now become a great instructor through the use of AI, whether that's helping you to create classes that are more active, that are more motivational, that are more hands on. We talk about having student centered instruction, but most academics don't really understand what that even means. Well, now AI can help you to create that quickly and easily. I know that everyone is burnt out and, we're still suffering from COVID, still overworked. But guess what? The AI can do a lot of that work for you to be able to make a class that much better, that much more engaging and useful for the student. Because just going in to get a lecture, okay, now they pass that class, they're going to instantly forget it because the lecture has been shown to not be effectively remembered in the long term. So all these type of things, AI can help with that. So that's a big one dealing with instructors. And there's more. I mean, the book talks about things like, hey, if I have a student that has this issue, that has this learning issue, how do I handle that? Guess what? If you can properly prompt the AI, it can help you with that. Behavioral issues, AI can assist you, all sorts of different things. But again, using the AI appropriately. So that's the aspect of how an instructor could use AI. And there's plenty more there. But now let's talk about the student, because this I see as a fundamental change in the realities of the agency that now students have. Now, a student could always go and read the entire encyclopedia, right? That's what Elon Musk did. That's why he's so smart. He did that on his own. He was self motivated to go and do that. So, knowledge always existed. It was available to us. Both you and I are young enough to be in the information age, meaning that we have internet, we have books, magazines, everything is available there. But being able to organize that and easily present it to us so that we can easily learn, well, that takes a lot more work and effort. But now the AI is there. So now a student, they can use the AI to function as a tutor for them, to go through the Socratic method, help them to prepare for a test. Hey, my instructor just talked about Plato's the allegory of the cave. He taught it to me today. I didn't understand it. Totally went over my head. Can you please teach it to me as if I'm in high school? And guess what? It'll do it. You know what? I still didn't get it. I'm embarrassed, so I'm not going to go ask my instructor about this. But could you teach it to me as if I was in middle school? No problem. Here you go. Okay, now I get it. Now make it a bit more complicated so I'm ready for our next class. Now teach it to me as we're back in college. Okay, now I get it. And I can do this as many times as necessary for me to really grasp the information. I have a test coming up. Hey, my instructor gave me a sheet here of information, a study guide. I'm going to feed this into the AI. Help me practice for this. Help me go through it. Make a mock test for me. Make another mock test. My instructor is teaching me math. I'm really bad at math. And he gave all of these questions to us. I don't understand it. Can you give me some examples? But I'm really into soccer. Can you give me soccer examples? Yeah, no problem. So now I can learn based off of what is personally important to me, what'll motivate me, what'll help me understand. Why? Because the AI now gives me all this agency. The big thing, though, is that we have to teach the students how to do that because they generally don't know that on their own. I mean, how many classes have you had that teaches you how to learn? Probably very few. So that's the thing that we have to do that on top of the aspect of AI literacy. Because if I don't know how to properly prompt the AI, then I'm going to one, not be able to do it, and two, I could get in trouble for it. If I take an essay that I wrote and I give it to the AI and I say, "Hey, give me feedback on this," and just leave it at that, 9 times out of 10, the AI will say, "Hey, here's some feedback for you. Here's a new version that's even better." Well, that's academic misconduct right there. But if I go to the AI and say, "Hey, please act as my instructor. Here's the rubric. Here's what they're going to be grading me on. Here's my essay. Now give me feedback, but only information that I can use to make mine better. Do not rewrite it for me." Well, guess what? Now that's not academic misconduct. That's the same thing as me going to a peer and saying, "Can you please review this for me?" So again, there's that middle ground, but we have to ensure that we teach our students how to use the AI properly. So that's AI literacy in itself.
Yeah, and I really like how you weaved that in at the end because this is hard even for us as instructors to
Yeah.
really wrap our heads around sometimes. And I've always been a proponent of early versions of Grammarly because it gave you suggestions.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
wouldn't
Yeah.
automatically correct it for you. They've moved further and further in away from that with
They
some
sure
of the
did.
tools they're using. But early on, it was consider revising this because
Mhm.
it's unclear. Use more active voice. And those are the types of things where I can see AI being really helpful for a student who's struggling. And I don't know if you've used Conmigo at all, but Khan Academy's version of
Mhm.
AI. And I love the way it kind of approaches that educational piece
Yeah.
because as a student, you can interact with literary figures, historical figures as simulations. And it's
Yeah.
very upfront, very clear about this is a simulation based on publicly available data on Abraham Lincoln, for
Right.
example. And you can have a conversation or you could do Jane Austen or you can I mean there were
Right.
a whole bunch when I played with it. And I think that the intentionality is what's so important about how we use these.
Hmm.
We know that students, regardless, like you mentioned paper mills earlier, some students are going to cheat. They're going to look for a way to cheat. I
Right.
don't believe that's the majority of students. I don't in any way think that's the majority. I think a lot of students fall into academic misconduct by accident in many cases and really aren't intending to do something wrong. And AI can give you a slippery slope. Like you said, if you don't tell it, act as my instructor giving me feedback, they're programmed to do it for you
Right.
and to give you answers rather than give you kind of that catalyst and that thinking component of here's how you could approach it better.
Right. Yeah. And that goes with sort of how we instruct in general, because you mentioned some other things as far as like sometimes students end up cheating for different reasons. And yeah, that's even the way that the course is structured can contribute more to cheating than not. Right. There's some very researched things as far as like, oh, if I have a midterm and then a final and that's it, no, no formative assessment, just summative assessments, guess what? Way more likely that people are going to cheat because there's not enough opportunity for me to get feedback, for me to understand these things. So that's an aspect just as structurally. But then going along with what you just said, as I'm teaching, if I can think about these things and express that to students, then that's going to be so much more impactful for them to understand, meaning that, hey, just getting the answer, that's not going to help you because what I'm trying to teach you is this process of understanding so that you can apply this in many different situations. So if I give you a formative, let's say, quiz and you use AI to simply answer it, well, that's not going to help you for the summative test because you won't be able to use the AI. So if I even give you homework, you use the AI for it. Well, now the summative test is going to be in class where you can't use AI. Guess what? You didn't help yourself. But that needs to be very explicit. I remember going through and getting my undergraduate degree. I never put two and two together. I never knew that. I never figured that out on my own, right? We would have these math assignments and there would be answers in the back. Well, that's how you do your homework. Just look at the back. The answers are right there. Why would I waste my time doing that? Oh, because at the end, when you have to do the big test, that would have helped you for this. I didn't put that together for a while. So that took me a lot longer. So we have to be crystal clear with this to the students as they're sort of forming and developing to understand this is the purpose for this. This is why we're going through this. This is foundational knowledge so that later on in more advanced classes, when we bring in the AI, well, now you can function with it. You can use it that much more because you understand the components behind the topic at hand. You'll also be better able to see what the results look like as far as, yeah, this is a good result or no, this is a poor result. And it's funny because I did this with some reporters one time. I gave a workshop for journalism and I showed them, I said, look, here I am. I'm going to write this article using AI. I'm going to do it in two different ways. And so I did the first one where I just told the AI, hey, write a news article for me about this. And it gave it to me. And I asked them, I said, what do you think about this news article? And they were like, man, it's not really that good. And I'm like, you're right. But now let me write it this way. And then I used an advanced prompt formula. I said, write it like a Pulitzer Prize winning author, make it unique, use burstiness of language, modify. So again, I know how to write an advanced prompt. And then when they looked at the new version, they were like, they got scared. They were like, oh yeah, this could replace me. Right. Because it's so good. And the thing is that I said, but wait a second, you knew that that first version wasn't that good. And you knew that that second version was much better because you have subject matter expertise. And that's what students are lacking when they just get an AI result and they're like, oh, okay, here you go, teach. You wanted an essay, here you go. But no, I'm trying to develop the students to be able to properly analyze and see, oh, these are some aspects that are not what we want. That's not an A paper. This is an A paper because of this, this, and this. And in fact, maybe that should be more of the assessments that we start to do where here's your test, here's a finished essay. Now identify the issues. Maybe there's no issues. Let's see if you can tell me why, how, where, when. So again, it's this aspect of thinking more about the rubric and thinking more about what are we really trying to assess? What are our SLOs, our student learning?
Yeah, yeah, and I really appreciate that. And this kind of leads me to another question. And you and I have similar backgrounds as far as having that educational piece. My master's was in adult education and learning.
Yeah.
So in some ways, that kind of, I don't want to say gives us an advantage, but it did me in the classroom
Mm,
of being able, when I taught the first time, I was still nervous. I'm nervous every time I teach, but this idea of I had an educational foundation for understanding more of how learning happens. And like you said, that's a systemic problem with higher education where, not to any fault, but PhDs are taught to be experts. And, those of us with doctorates are taught to be experts in our field. We're not really taught how to teach that field. And quite frankly, that's because those are two different things. And, you have to cram all of that stuff into one thing. And so I really like how you said understanding and how you can level a little bit with, because a really good designer, because I happen to be one of those too, is not going to be easily replaced by AI, but it can be a companion to help at least level somewhat for those circumstances where you don't have access to a designer, where you don't have access to those resources, and it can make a good designer better.
mm,
I've always seen it less as a time save and more as an enhancement
mm.
to being able to create better work. It may still take me just as much, maybe even a little more time, but I can create something better as a
Yeah.
result. But I do, you brought that up and it got me thinking there's been a movement, and you even see books starting to come out about this, of wanting to take all technology out of the
Hmm.
classroom now and wanting to go back to pen and paper examination, blue books for those of us old enough to remember blue books, all of those things, and use traditional teaching techniques and just almost ignoring that AI is there. What would you say to the faculty member who said technology is the problem, not assessment? Technology is the problem. It's getting in the way of us being able to teach. I'm just curious what your thoughts would be on that.
Yeah, so and it's funny because I get sometimes people are like, "Oh yeah, you're an AI fanboy, you're a technology fanboy." And that's not true because again, when I went over the aspects of AI literacy, the very first thing I said is awareness and how AI can be good and bad. So that's an important thing to understand. Now going back specifically to technology, yeah, I mean, using technology purely for the sake of technology is always the wrong answer, right? We don't want to just have it in there. Now, there is something to be said for bringing in technology for motivation, right? Like it's very cool to use a new technology and to get students to be like, "Oh yeah, let's look at this." Great. But simply to say we have to go through this technology because technology is there, that's not the right answer. We should have reasons for what we're going through and why we're doing this. I do agree that, hey, pen and paper can be effective for some aspects, but that shouldn't replace everything. That should be a skill on its own. And that could be an assessment aspect because now I'm forcing you to think and to write right now. Yeah, very powerful. But we have to balance that approach because the reality is that modern technology is used in every single job, right? If you're my employee, I'm going to ask you for a report. I don't want it to be handwritten. I'm going to run it to be typed up. So those different aspects, we need these different skills, but we do need to have a balance in our lives of using technology appropriately when it's needed and then when not to use it. We shouldn't be on our phones every single moment of the day, but that has to be taught to us. How many students right now get classes on effective and proper use of social media? I've never heard of it, but yet we talk about it all the time. So maybe we should have a class on that, right? So those type of things to understand, well, how should we use AI? How should we use technology appropriately? And then introduce that into the schools. But again, with an understanding of why are we doing this? And it is a matter of not simply have blanket statements for everything. I remember going through high school and it was like typing skills are so important. They were wanting to introduce that. And they did introduce that where I lived at. They introduced it now to like middle school. So there was typing in middle school. And the thing is, I was like, that's stupid. They don't really need that then unless they're typing a paper because I didn't learn how to even type until I was about to graduate from high school. And yet, guess what? I'm one of the fastest typists I know. So it's a skill that we need to understand. Well, when is it appropriate? When do they really need it? When is it going to really help them? That's when we introduce that technology. But also, there's the part about use of the technology. People like to say, "Oh, death by PowerPoint. PowerPoint is, so overused and blah, blah, blah." No, PowerPoint is an awesome technology. It's one of the best technologies out there. The problem is poor use of the technology. And this is one of the classes I teach. I teach professional communications. We have a whole section where we talk about effective use of slideshows. So that's something that people need to know. So if I have a slideshow and I'm showing you an image, just an image, and I'm talking about it, and I'm using that to get some emotional response from you as I explain things from you, guess what? That's a great use of PowerPoint. But if I have a slide up there and it's filled with text, well, that's a very distracting thing, and that's not a good effective use of technology. Simply saying blanket use of technology is bad, well, no, overuse, inappropriate use, those are issues. Those are things that we need to address. So blanket statements isn't going to be helpful.
I would completely agree. You brought up PowerPoint, and this triggered something you said earlier when you were talking about when to introduce technology, being able to tell it was a fully AI generated thing. I remember one of my kids was doing a PowerPoint for their class. And of course, they always ask for our feedback. We're lucky our kids think we actually know stuff. So, but they asked for some feedback, and so I said, "Hey, the content's great. You might want to add in some bullet points. You might want to resize your image to make it more appealing. Text amount was just right." And they were told that if they used bullet points and if they structured it that way, that's how AI does it and it would be considered AI. And I
Right.
wonder, and this is an extreme tangent, but I wonder if we're becoming so fearful
Yeah.
as teachers sometimes that we're actually encouraging bad work because
100%.
that's just good PowerPoint design.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. Like now, M dash, everyone's so afraid to use the M dash when it's a perfectly good literary device, to use an M dash for certain things. But since AI does it, yeah, now most people shy away from it. Same thing with, we get a lot of essays now where, I'll go up to my student and I'll be like, "You're my A plus student, right? And I know that you're my A plus student, not just from in class stuff, but from being able to talk to you because I do a lot of discussion in my writing class because I'm holding students accountable for understanding things up here. And I'm like, why would you turn this in? Because this was a big essay that they turned in with like 5 different grammatical errors that I know you know better." And she's like, "Yeah, I put those in on purpose because I didn't want you to think it was AI." So this is the type of thing that's going around, and I talked to my other instructors, and they're like, "Yeah, same thing. A students are doing that because they're so fearful that you're going to think that it's AI if it's just perfect." Well, but that's what we teach. We teach them that you should be grammatically perfect, especially now because we have Grammarly, we have Microsoft Word that can show you, hey, this is misspelled, this is an issue. But now, because of the fearfulness of AI, now it's sort of going backwards. So, yeah, that's a real issue. I totally agree.
So I could talk to you all day, but I'm mindful of your time. I'm also mindful of your time zone.
Yeah,
And, I totally appreciate you being here and I appreciate this conversation. At some point, I'd love to have you back on and talk about what this means in the online space because I teach a lot online, especially in the asynchronous space. I think that would be an even richer conversation in some areas because some of the things we've talked about wouldn't apply,
right.
but some of the things that we have talked about would apply across the board.
Yeah,
But what
yeah.
I'd like to do here is give you just if you could kind of tell people where they can find you. I'm also going to drop all of this in the description so anyone watching this can connect with you or reach out to you. But tell us a little bit because you have an online social
Yeah.
you have an online social presence and you've done a lot of really good work and I'd like people to know more about where they can access that.
Yeah, definitely. So my big thing is I definitely want to reach a broad audience just so that because I know that we're all in this together, right? And I want AI literacy to spread for all of academia. My work as a consultant is to go around different countries physically sometimes or online to do workshops and things like that. But I also try to reach a lot of people through my YouTube channel. So this is a YouTube channel. And yeah, thank you for putting the link there for them. That basically goes over different topics dealing with AI in education, AI technology, what this means. Some of it is very direct as far as, hey, this is a technical thing, or some of it is very metaphysical. Let's talk about this. AI relationships as if they were a girlfriend and boyfriend, all sorts of different things, because these are different things that we need to understand as instructors so that we can talk about this with our students, so that we can help them to develop. That's a big one that I really push for. I have like over 250 videos up there already. I try to release one pretty much weekly so that we can keep things fresh and new. But there's also a whole series on there. There's a playlist just talking about AI literacy. So if someone needs to sort of develop that, it's on there, freely available. I also have some courses that are linked within my YouTube channel on every video. If you look in the description, there'll be a link to courses that I teach. These are asynchronous just to get a certificate in, say, AI literacy or AI literacy in academia. So that's available there to, again, share. But my biggest thing is to provide free resources so that we can all develop because we're in this together. So I want to continue to develop a community where we can help each other out, comments, discussions. This is how we really move things forward with understanding and implementation. I'm also available on LinkedIn. I'm there for anybody to connect with so that we can have a bigger social network so that we can share different things as they come up because there's lots of interesting articles from many different people. I also have a blog website that's dedicated again with different articles. I have tons of infographics that I've made there dealing with AI in different components. And here recently, there's two big white papers that I released through, again, the Silverell Center for Teaching and Learning. One dealt with a framework for AI. It's called the Compass AI Literacy Framework for Education Integration. And again, that is set up so that it's Creative Commons, it's free, any university can use it, and it easily breaks it up, just like I talked about. But then it also talks about, well, how could we teach this? How could we put this into courses? What would be some SLOs associated with this? So that's there. And then another good document that was released last year, I'm trying to work on a new document, a new version, but it goes through and it breaks things down as far as, hey, look, here are the top, let's say, 12 different industries or businesses or fields, right? Like politics or business or chemistry, biology, health, something like that. And here are AI tools that are being used in those fields and the AI skills that students should be developing right now. So that's a good white paper for sort of all of academia to look at and go, oh, yeah, I'm in the healthcare, I'm an instructor for nurses and I'm not teaching them about this, to try to get them thinking that, oh, yeah, this is a real thing. This is how it's currently being used. So I do need to integrate this into my instruction. So those are some big things that I have out there for everyone to access, to use, again, to develop this community. So I'm available in many different ways.
Well, Brent, thank you again. Thanks for being willing to hop on here. Thanks for
Yeah,
engaging. This is a pretty vibrant community, people from all different industries, walks of life. And it's just been a pleasure having you on to talk
great.
about your experience, your expertise. And until next time, everyone, please like, subscribe, share this out, follow Brent on his channel, and keep on moving forward. And we will talk to you soon. Bye
Great.
now.
Thanks. Bye bye.